Hello everyone, this is Dr. Wei Shu from NYIT. So I want to talk about what is new literacy. New literacy is new form of literacy made possible by new technology. And specifically, new literacies refers to a set of skill utilizing ICTs, information and communication technologies, to research, locate, evaluate, synthesize, and communicate information. In our project, we incorporate new literacy framework and use ICTs to facilitate students' literacy development in the scientific inquiry process. And you'll see that during the presentation. And our team will also, show you the examples of ICTs. So this is the new literacy framework we proposed. It's published by Journal of Science and Technology. You can also find the application of it in several articles in Science Scope as well. This framework explains how new literacy skills support the scientific inquiry. So you can see these are the new literacies. And to be proficient or fluent in new literacy skills, one needs to be proficient in technology, literacy, and cognitive skills. Now, the literacy here also include the domain-specific literacy. So since literacy framework, new literacy framework is situational, and we integrate it into the science learning context, if you examine closely, you'll find these new literacy components supporting the development of the scientific practices. Here are the scientific practices by NGSS. So just a refresher: asking questions and defining problems, developing and using models, planning and carry out investigations, analyzing and interpreting data, using mathematics and computational skills, constructing explanation and designing solutions, engaging in argument from evidence, obtaining, evaluating, and communicating information. So this chart would show you how new literacy components can actually support scientific practices. So you can see that identifying question would actually support the practices of asking question, develop and using model. Locate information would support these two. Other than that, it would also support plan and carry out investigation, analyze and interpret data. For evaluation, for evaluating information, it actually support all the practices. Synthesizing information will support these practices, and also communicating information would also support construct explanation, engaging in argument from evidence, and communicating information. So I hope this would help you understand our new literacy framework. And the rest of the presentation, our team would show you how we adopt the new literacy framework and use ICTs to facilitate students' literacy development in the science classroom.
Hi, my name is Xianghui Wang. I work for the Master of Science in Instructional Technology program at the New York Institute of Technology. My expertise is technology integration in the learning environment. So I'm going to briefly talk about what is ICTs. It's information and communication technologies. So ICTs, they are hardware and application software that can allow us to access to information in multimodal format. It can allow us to search information, process information, synthesize information, and communicate information. So ask yourself, what kind of technology or software have you been using that has this kind of functions? And actually quite a lot. For example, Google. Everybody uses Google. The internet search tools can be considered as one type of ICTs. Word processing tool like Microsoft word processing tool or Google Doc, spreadsheet, mapping tools such as Google Map or Google Earth, video and image editing tool, or there are many other tools like even emails or blog. they are considered as a type of ICTs. So without these tools, you can't make new literacy happen. So new literacies can be mediated through the use of ICTs. So the goal of this presentation is to help teachers to have the knowledge to work with their students to use ICT to develop their new literacy skills and communication skills. So remember, the key is not teacher use ICTs. That is the traditional technology integration approach, which is teacher-centered. We should consider the way to have students to use ICTs. That's the only way you can practice their new literacy skills, practice their technology skills, and also improve their 21st century skill that they need to succeed in the future workforce. For example, using Google Doc, it can help you to collaborate with other students, even from a remote site. And spreadsheet, it can allow them to not only to analyze problems, generate information that need to create a model, and also they can communicate their understanding through various format of charts. So it's a mapping tool. Mapping tool is not only allowed students to access to maps, but with Google Map or Google Earth, they can actually create landmarks or create paths that can present their understanding of a particular topic. And there are more and more ideas that they can use. If they know how to use these tools, they can learn how to transfer those tools in other topics or doing different kind of projects.
Hi, my name is Marvin, and I will share with you sample student works to show how ICTs support the literacy and scientific inquiry skills in the classroom. The literacy skills that we want our students to learn um, are the following. Students should be able to identify problems, locate information, evaluate the sources of information, synthesize this information, and communicate this information. The use of Google Docs would allow students to do this. I had my students sign up for Google Drive, especially if they have Gmail accounts. So the use of Google Docs will allow students to research on a particular scientific idea for the projects. And Google Docs will allow them to collaborate with their teammates, partners, and classmates, and eventually they can incorporate other technology tools in the creation of their project presentations. I'm showing you an example project of students that was submitted for the Explore a Vision project. So with this particular project, we can see that students are able to identify their own research problems. And based on the research problem that they have created, they can locate information. And the information can best be gathered using Google Docs, especially there is a research capability in Google Docs. Aside from having the research capability, Google Docs also allows footnoting, and so students will be able to come up with their bibliography at the end of the report. The use of Google Docs also allows students to deploy Google Citation into their research project, as I mentioned a while ago. And the next project I'm going to show you is a project on student space flight experiment program at the International Space Station. Here, students, once again, are required to come up with their own research problem. And based on the research problem that they came up, they locate information. They research on this information, and they're able to synthesize this information until they can come up with their own final proposal. Again, incorporated in this research project are their research, the research ideas that they gathered, as well as the capability of the Google Docs to show footnotes and eventually the bibliography in here. So eventually students are able to present, as when they're finished synthesizing this information, they present this report to the class based on this report. The use of Google presentation also allows the students to communicate the research that they did in answer to the research questions that they have previously formulated. They also they use the internet to locate information. They also capture important components of of the report with a camera. And one particular project was the micro ecosystem investigation. And one student created a video to make a report of what she has gathered.
The ecosystem that I am investigating is located in Stuyvesant Town.
So this is
Stuyvesant Town is a
the
community in
output
Manhattan
of
that
the
has a lot
student
of
when she
parks
did a
and grassy
video
areas
on a
with many
previously
animals such as dogs,
written
birds, and
report
squirrels.
investigation
The area that I am
on the
focusing on
biotic
is
and
located
abiotic
in the center of
components.
Stuyvesant Town and is known as the
So here we can see that the student was investigating on the biotic and abiotic components of the micro ecosystem that she chose, and now she's making connection between these biotic and abiotic factor, and she presented this in class using this video. So the use of this video is one capability for the students, one ICT tool that she used to communicate the literacy skills that she has learned. One popular communication tools that my students are employing in the classroom is the Google presentation. Some of them are also using Microsoft PowerPoint. So this we can see that students are able to incorporate the imaging, the pictures, as well as the editing tool to identify the biotic and the abiotic components of the micro ecosystem that he has chosen. So here we can see that the imaging and as well as the presentation are another means of communicating what the students have previously learned. The writing of the lab report is what I can consider an ultimate writing output for the students, because here we can see that all of the literacy skills are incorporated, and we can see that all of these are in the laboratory report. So in the laboratory report, depending on what kind of laboratory report we are doing at the moment, whether it's guided or whether it's an independent one, students have the capability to identify their own problems. Then out of that problem, they can locate information, and again, they evaluate the sources. It's always important that students understand that the resources, the source of information should be reputable, and it should be accurate in order to establish accurate information as well. So students have the opportunity to evaluate this information, put them together, and eventually communicate that using spreadsheets, even images, screenshots of the images that are important portions of the lab report, and then they can share the lab report with everyone in the class through our class page. So here's an example of a laboratory report that student did on the water quality investigation. The source of data is the Long Island Sound, and since our school is located in the city, we did not have the chance to go to the Long Island Sound or any part of it. So we gathered water data parameters from the MySound website. So that is the cyber database from which we gather the information. So students were able to gather the data and then locate information about water quality, and they were able to come up with this lab report. And through the lab report, they were able to include images of the website as well as the parameters when they were measuring that. And they were also able to incorporate the Google Earth screenshot of the area where they gathered the data from. We also actually used YouTube videos to show documentaries, and from these documentaries, students are made to write a reaction paper. And so once again, the literacy skills in here are being covered, and eventually students are asked to present their reaction paper, and so everybody can read it, and they can comment on their student reaction paper. Again, this is based on the Google Docs capability of research, and also enabling the students to come up with their own bibliography. Another way by which students can share information to their classmates on the new literacy skills that they have learned is through slide presentation and also stop motion animation. I'm sharing with you two projects that show how students can use images and editing tools to share their information that they gathered, and the information that they gathered based on the lesson is now presented to the students. So that this shows now that the literacy skills can be shared with everyone. So even when you can see that this is just a very simple project, but this is based on the students' research, and they're looking into the relationship, the structural functions of the different organelles of the cell, and now they are presenting it in class as their project. Students also create stop motion animation as part of the project to present concept that they learned, and concept that they have research on, so that it can be shown to class. And even right now, I can use this student project as a teaching tool in the classroom. One of the capabilities that I use in gathering information, as well as gathering information from students, is having them participate in online polls. And this is facilitated by our class page, which we will all share with you in a little while. So here the students can see that they are able to gather information through a survey, and using our social media class page, we are able to gather information. Also, the use of social media class page, we are able to gather student data based on their online test. So students can take the test, and then they receive their feedback right away on our class page.
So hi, my name is Elizabeth Whalen. As I said before, I'm a New York City science teacher in 7th grade at the New York City Lab School for Collaborative Studies. I'm also a master science teacher through Math for America. The goal of Math for America is to sort of put science teachers in New York City and other cities in the country together to share their knowledge and best practices with the goal of sort of advancing our teaching skills. So I'm going to be talking today a little bit about a structured inquiry activity that I do in my classroom to use, and which I use ICT skills to promote the scientific literacies. This particular lab is on temperature and dissolved oxygen, where students see the relationship that temperature has on dissolved oxygen levels in the water. This is a lab that could be done in a chemistry science class. I do it in my life sciences class as part of our ecology unit. So before I have students work on the lab, I first do some primary just ecology lessons on water quality. We take a look at sort of the different water quality parameters that affect the overall health of a body of water and how it affects the living organisms that are in the water and around the water. Using my smartboard, I introduce the class to different databases. We focus on My Sound database and the USGS database. For the lab itself, I have the students collect their data from My Sound because it is data that's gathered from the Long Island Sound, which is close to our school. So it's a body of water that students can connect to and relate to. However, it's far enough away that they understand that we need to use databases to access research from this area. This is a screenshot of what the students will see when they go home at night to gather their research. I pair them up and I have them collect data. They must log on or look onto the database at least once a day, although oftentimes students will do it more. And we can see that here, once they choose whatever sensor that they and their partner decide on, they can pick if they want to look at the surface of the water, if they want to look sort of in the middle of the water, and some of the stations, the water quality stations, actually have bottom sensors too, so they can choose which part of the water in the Long Island Sound they want to research. While students are collecting data, this takes about a week, so during this time in class, we go over what is a researchable question. There are lessons on independent, dependent controlled variables, and different activities. We talk about how to formulate a hypothesis, and students practice writing them. I think it's important that I build these skills and that they get a chance to practice these skills at the beginning of the year, because it then promotes sort of really good work later on while they're working on labs throughout the course. Once students have sort of collected their data, before we actually analyze the data, I have students work in pairs to read the introduction to the lab. And as they're reading the introduction, they're thinking about the background information, the purpose of the lab, and what we're going to learn. And they highlight these aspects in different colors to really show that they're understanding what they're reading and they're able to identify these parts that are important to a good introduction. I find that when writing lab reports, I like to model sort of good work or good writing before, because some students don't always know sort of what an introduction should look like or how they should go about writing it and organizing it. We also develop the hypothesis as a class, and this is based on our water quality lessons that we do in the ecology unit. So our working hypothesis is, and we sort of make it together, if the water temperature increases, then the dissolved oxygen will decrease because, and then each of the students, even though we're articulate and write out their own sort of reasons why based on the water quality lessons we've covered. In order for the students to analyze their data, it's also important to sort of teach them the skills about how to go about doing this. So we discuss the types of graphs that are appropriate to compare relationships. In math and science, we know that there are lots of times different graphs that we can use, and some are better than others, depending on the questions that we're asking and the data that we've gathered. So we focus on scatter plot graphs because that can really show the relationship between two different variables, whether that's a positive relationship, whether it's a negative relationship, or if there's no relationship between these variables. I also introduce them to spreadsheet using the smartboard in my classroom. I bring up what a Google spreadsheet looks like. I model how you can enter data in the graph and demonstrate how to create a graph. But it's important not just that the students watch me enter data and create a graph, that they actually get the chance to practice this with sort of kind of a low stakes activity. So they work in pairs to enter a given data set that's just related to brushing teeth and the number of cavities. They then work with their partners to create a scatter plot and also determine the type of relationship. Does the data show a positive, negative, or no relationship, and why? This is two screenshots of what the data looks like. This is the data I post up on the smartboard for them to enter in. They then go in, log into spreadsheet, type it in, and create their graphs. It's a great way for me to really also quickly assess their sort of proficiency in creating a graph. I can walk around and check in. Students who finish early also can help you out as a teacher. So if you've checked one group and you said, okay, this is great, your graph looks good, they can also, if you have other kids who are waiting for you, they can help other students too if they're having trouble or troubleshoot any problems, so that they can also create the graph before we move on to the lab report. So I've created two lab templates for this particular graph. I teach a very diverse group of learners in each classroom. So in any of my particular classes, I have students who are well above grade level, students who are at grade level, and students who could be 1, 2, or even sometimes 3 years below grade level in a particular area. So these are lab templates that are differentiated based on, it could be based on their IEP, or it could just be based on observations and grades that I've made in the classroom. So here, when the students are ready and they have a laptop, I will just let them know. I post both templates up to an Edmodo site, which we'll talk about later on. So, and then I just walk around and I tell the pairs, okay, open lab A or open lab B, so that it brings up the template that is best for them and what they're ready for. So this is the introduction that they highlight in class. Here is our hypothesis. The materials and methods are filled in. What they're responsible for doing is the independent and dependent variable. They'll create a hyperlink to their spreadsheet. They're also welcome to insert any their scatter plot graph or images that they find that are relevant and summarize their results. And within this, when they open it up, there's sort of clearly articulated directions for them to complete the results and conclusions. This is lab template B. The differences here is really in the results and conclusions section. So there are sentence starters to help students who are maybe struggling writers. This is also a great tool for ELL students to see sort of how we word. It also gives students who may not know what to include ideas for that it's important in the results to use different statistical analysis, like perhaps the range, to talk about the relationships. And the conclusion is broken up for the students either so that they can focus on each task and they're spaced apart, helps with organization, in addition to sentence starters in the conclusion. So this is a sample of a final lab report. So as we scroll down, the students have inserted a hyperlink, which includes all of their data. And we talk about in our lab report sort of not cluttering it with too much information, but giving people the access to look at all of their information to show where their information is from and maybe some more detailed qualitative data. It also includes a snapshot of the graph that they've created. Okay, this is their spreadsheet or their graph that they've created displaying their negative relationship between temperature and dissolved oxygen. This partnership, they also had time to insert an image that showed exactly where in the Long Island Sound their water quality sensor was located. They decided to import a picture that shows the range of tolerance for dissolved oxygen in fish, showing their understanding of the connection to the real world and why it's important to study temperature and dissolved oxygen in our bodies of water. When we look at their results and conclusions, they've included various things like the range and the mean and statistical analysis to analyze their data. In their conclusions, they'll address the hypothesis and also import any or footnote any research that they've done to really show the science behind the phenomena that we're seeing. So here they've footnoted that they've researched that the reason sort of why the oxygen actually decreases and the chemistry behind that. And here is their sort of footnote. We want to make sure that students are using reliable sources. Here they've used a university site to gain their research. A big piece is communicating their research reports and also looking at other students' reports too and responding to that in a smart way. So we use Edmodo in my classroom. It's an educational social networking site where students are able to post their labs. And the expectation in my classroom is that they read and respond to at least one lab report from the class. They must provide positive feedback in addition to constructive criticism, sort of areas for improvement. This is a great way for students to get ideas. If they're reading other students' work, they may find, oh wow, that was a really great way of how they wrote their conclusion, and I'm going to try to incorporate that into my next lab. And also sort of really look up, be like a fresh set of eyes for someone and help them sort of see areas for improvement in their work. This is a screenshot of two students who posted their lab and two other students who commented on it. You can see how they're providing what they thought was done well in the lab, connections to the real world, the conclusions and the inferences, whereas one of the students had trouble seeing the data chart. So the two partners or the two people could actually go back and fix their work because it is in a Google Doc, so they can make sure that the chart is able to be seen, in addition to going back and adding some more analysis, possibly like the MAD, which they did after seeing Jeff's comment. As science teachers, when we design our curriculum, it's always important to make sure that we're not only teaching content skills, but that we're teaching process skills, and that we're aligning our curriculum with the various standards in New York State, or at least where I'm from in New York State. So my standards, I want to make sure that I'm covering analysis, inquiry, and design standards. I'm not going to go through them all, but you can read through them. In addition to the New York State standards for living environment, content standards. Right now, my school is in the process also of articulating that we're also covering all of the NGSS standards. So that's important to highlight in our work and make sure we're teaching those skills and sort of content knowledge. And the final piece is to show the alignment with the Common Core standards. As science teachers, we have a responsibility to make sure that our children are scientifically literate, and that involves various sort of reading comprehension skills. In addition to these ELA and literacy skills, students need to be able to explain their ideas and their findings in writing in a formal and coherent way. So that's the lab report on temperature and dissolved oxygen. The final thing I wanted to talk about was just some additional ICT advantages. And these are things that you can do in any of your lab reports, regardless of the topic that you're teaching in class. You can use Google Images and videos when you're using Google Docs to write reports. In addition to a skill or a technique that I'm using in my class with color coding. So this was a lab students did on blackworms. The template for this was, we did this lab after the dissolved oxygen and temperature lab because we were still in our ecology unit. But in this case, the students actually did research blackworms. They had to find reliable websites. They wrote their whole introduction, including the background. They had to write a materials list and methods. So they did every piece of the lab template that you saw in A and B for the temperature and dissolved oxygen. And they took, using an iPad or their phones, pictures of the blackworms in the sand and also the rocks, which are harder to see because the students found that they like to hide under the rocks. This is a sample student introduction using the technique that we did with temperature and dissolved oxygen. When they write their introduction to this lab, I have them highlight in different colors the purpose of the experiment, the background information that they've gathered, in addition to citing where that background information came from, and what the students are going to learn from their lab report. It's a quick and easy way for me to walk around and quickly assess, do they know how to write an introduction, and are they including all of the main things that should be in a scientific introduction lab report.
Hi everyone, I'm Joshua Ng from Lower Manhattan Community Middle School, and we're going to continue talking a little bit about how we've used ICTs in our science classrooms. And I want to talk about how I've used Google Drive. We've heard from Marvin and Liz, and it's important to know that when we look at these ICTs, we can use these different skills across all content areas. Different areas of science as well as in different subjects as well. And these transferable skills are important because these are tools that our students will be able to use beyond middle school, beyond high school, in college, and in their career. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I've used Google Documents, spreadsheets, and Form in my classroom. So specifically in my earth science unit, when teaching about volcanoes, kind of the end project was applying what we know about volcanoes and earth science and geology to the real world. And we identified a question of how does volcanic activity affect global temperatures. Global warming is definitely a hot topic in society today. And so we want to find out, or I wanted my students to see if we can find any correlation between the increase in volcanic activity with global temperatures. So as part of our structured inquiry, we looked at some background information from NOAA and came across a few different pieces of information that told us that over the past 20 years or so in the US, the temperature, global temperature has increased. And a big part of that is us as humans inputting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. But we felt like because volcanoes also emit some of these gases into the atmosphere, maybe there is a relationship between that. So using our lab report template in Google Docs, we are able to create a hypothesis together. Also using a few different databases that we found very useful to our particular research, where we were able to collect relevant data to our question. So what I had my students do using a couple of these databases is collect both qualitative and quantitative data in a Google spreadsheet. So this particular student collected data on 6 different volcanoes in her spreadsheet, and it's a great tool to be able to organize data, not just quantitatively but also qualitatively. And using the database from NGDC and NOAA, we were able to establish specific parameters that we wanted to look in different regions of the world for volcanoes that were erupting. And based on that, we also collected temperature data from those regions. And after collecting that into a spreadsheet as well, we were able to come up, or the students, I should say, were able to come up with a chart that they felt was best to display the data that they collected. And going back to our lab report document, using the results and conclusion sections, finding the relationship between our 2 variables. So as you can see, using document and spreadsheet were very useful in organizing information and being able to communicate all of the results that the students found. So in looking at the new literacy framework and identifying, locating, evaluating, synthesizing, and communicating information, we're able to do all of that using different technology tools. And the last one I want to talk about is also through Google. It's called Google Form. And it's a way for not only students to collect data, but it's also good for us as teachers, being able to collect assessment information from our students and provide immediate feedback. Basically, what I've used it for is exit tickets or quizzes, where you're basically having the students fill out their name, their class, and then you can choose what types of questions you ask, whether it be one that they type in, or maybe it's multiple choice, or maybe it's a checklist. But in any of these forms, you can then have all of the answers that the students have given all in one place, and it's really an easy tool and keeping all of our information organized. So those are just a few ways that we can use different technology tools. There are infinite ways that we can use this in the classroom. 2 more tools that I want to show you are in Google Docs and in the Google search. In Google Docs, just any type of word processing, we can input citation right inside the document using their research tool. And then with Google Search, we could organize our search according to reading level. So when you open Google Drive, click Create and create a new document. And it opened up just like any Word document. And under Tools, there's a Research option. And when it opens up, you can search just like you would search in Google. You can search just for images, scholarly articles, quotes, etc. And if you were to do a search, for example, water quality, different websites would come up, and you can choose anything to kind of open up and choose any of the links that come up. And when this comes up, you can read it and decide whether or not you think it has some valuable information for your document. And if you want to use that in your document, you can cite it by clicking the Cite button. And when you do that, it inserts a footnote. And when you scroll down to the bottom of your document, it cites everything for you. You can also choose to insert the link, where instead of adding a footnote, it will insert the link for you instead. Now let's go to the Google search tool and how that we can search by reading level. So in Google, if you search water quality, you get a whole bunch of different websites. Some may be relevant, some may not be, some might be too complex for your students or too simple for your students. And if you click Search Tools, there are a few different options that you can change different parameters for your search. And if you click on All Results, you'll see two different options. And if you click Reading Level, you can now narrow it down to sites that have basic, intermediate, or advanced reading level. So let's say you have either ELL students or students with very low reading levels. You click basic. It will only give you these sites that have lower reading level. And then the same for immediate and advanced. So these are two great tools that Google has provided